For over 3 decades, the world knew only one story. The story of Michael Landon, America's perfect TV dad, and his devoted widow, Cindy. She lived in silence, carefully preserving the legacy of a legend. But all silences eventually break. Now, that curtain of secrecy is about to fall. Behind the image of a fairy tale marriage lies a far more complex truth, a story Cindy has buried for too long about the man the world adored and the price she paid to stand by his side. The fairy tale beginning and harsh reality. It all began on the sunny, dusty set of Little House on the Prairie, where family values were celebrated weekly on the small screen. She was then Cindy Clerico, a 28-year-old makeup artist, quiet and almost invisible among the stars. He, at 48, was already a legend. Michael Landon wasn't just an actor, he was an icon, the epitome of a perfect father and husband to millions of viewers. When their paths crossed, and seemingly inevitable love story blossomed, to the outside world, it was love at first sight. Michael Landon, the family man on screen, decided to leave his second marriage for the woman he declared was the love of his life. Lavish wedding photos and flowery words in the press painted a perfect picture. But behind that picture, whispers had already begun. She was branded the homewrecker, the one who broke up a family. Faced with a storm of public opinion, Cindy chose silence. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain. She simply believed their love was strong enough to overcome anything. She didn't know that stepping into Michael Landon's life wasn't just stepping into love. It was stepping into the eye of a storm where she inherited not just his love, but also his wounds and his immense shadow. And that storm, in a way, never truly ended. The complex truth behind the perfect marriage. Michael Landon was a master performer, and his stage wasn't limited to the film set. Even when the doors of his home closed, he remained a man with an intense energy, capable of lighting up a room and then extinguishing it in a matter of seconds. Initially, that very charisma made Cindy feel chosen, special, the only one who could stand beside such a great man. But she soon realized that the light was too dazzling, and the shadow it cast was too vast. Michael's need for admiration wasn't satisfied by fan mail or critical acclaim. He needed it at home. He needed it in his wife's eyes. This subtly created an unspoken rule. In this house, there was only room for one story, one main character, and that was him. To survive in that world, Cindy had to begin a painful process of self-correction. She became his protector, his emotional anchor, tasked with absorbing all tension and ensuring his world remained perfect. She learned to soften her voice when she had differing opinions, to swallow questions, and to hide her personal worries so as not to bother her husband's peace. The role of the perfect wife demanded she always smile, even when she was crumbling inside. Michael's control wasn't expressed through shouting or physical abuse. It was more subtle and perhaps, for that reason, even more terrifying. He was a master at using silence as punishment. When he was displeased, he didn't argue, he retreated into a cold world, making Cindy feel guilty that her disappointment was proof of failure. All her emotions were mislabeled. If she cried from hurt, she was deemed dramatic. If she dared to question his decisions, she was considered disloyal. Gradually, she stopped seeking understanding. She felt like a stranger in her own marriage, a beautifully arranged prop beside the main star rather than a lifelong companion. Loneliness began to envelop her. Close friends gradually drifted away, not because of a big argument, but because Cindy had built walls. She stopped answering private questions. She stopped revealing the cracks in her life. She was trapped in a bitter paradox. She was branded a homewrecker by the world, the one who broke up Michael's family, so she absolutely could not let anyone see any flaws in this new marriage. She had to protect it, protect him, and in the process, she lost herself. Her love for him was still there, but it was shrouded in a vague fear and a feeling of being trapped with no way out. She didn't know that it would take the greatest tragedy of their lives for those suppressed walls to truly begin to crumble. The final confession. The diagnosis hit like a thunderclap. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. There was no more time for pretense, no room for roles. In an instant, every script, every public image Michael Landon had meticulously crafted became meaningless. All that remained was a man confronting death, and the woman who loved him even after everything. Cindy immediately became his primary caregiver, his scheduler, his nurse, and a shield protecting their children from the pain. She carried the immense burden because, for the first time, Michael couldn't. But behind closed doors, as she faced the truth alone, a complex, heart-wrenching emotion began to rise within her. The strong walls Michael had spent a lifetime building around himself began to crumble as his body weakened. And then he started to speak. Not as a star, but as a man who knew his time was running out. In those rare, quiet moments, he would whisper words Cindy had longed to hear for years. "I should have listened more," he admitted. "I wasn't always good to you. You deserved more than I gave." Each time, Cindy would nod, squeeze his hand, and say it was okay. But the truth was, it wasn't okay at all. She grieved for her dying husband, yet felt a simmering resentment. Resentment not because he was dying, but because he had waited until this very moment to truly let her in, to finally acknowledge the hidden corners of himself and their marriage. Only when there was no chance to mend anything did he begin to understand what she had endured. In those final months, Cindy lived in a strange limbo, grieving for a man still alive, yet mourning a marriage that was never truly what it seemed. But she didn't know that the most crucial words had yet to be uttered. The Secret Unburdened. The fateful day finally arrived. The room was silent, save for the steady hum of machines monitoring Michael's weakening heartbeat. Cindy sat beside him, clutching his hand, listening to the shallow breaths of the man she had spent her youth loving and protecting. And then he said something. His voice was so faint she almost didn't hear it. Just a few words, a short sentence. It wasn't an apology or a simple declaration of love. It was an instruction, a final directive. Those words changed everything. In that moment, Cindy realized a painful truth. Even on his deathbed, in his final hours, Michael Landon still wanted to control the narrative. He was still directing the final scene, and once again, she was cast as the guardian of his legacy, the keeper of secrets, so that his image would forever remain perfect. And for over 30 years, she did just that. She buried those last words, viewing it as the final duty of a grieving widow. She believed it was what he wanted. But silence carries its own weight. That burden, over the years, became unbearable. Now, in her 60s, Cindy Landon has made a decision. She is no longer the young wife fearing public scrutiny or the widow bound by a promise. She is a woman who has lived long enough to understand that her truth also has value. She declared, "I no longer owe him that silence." Her decision to speak out is not about revenge or tarnishing a legend. It is an act of self-preservation. It is a struggle to reclaim the piece of her soul she lost living in someone else's shadow. After decades of guarding his story, it is time for her to tell hers. When a legend is challenged. When Cindy Landon's first words began to spread, it sent shockwaves through the hearts of fans who had grown up with Michael Landon. The reactions were immediate and deeply polarized. On one side were the disbelievers, those who had placed their complete trust in the image of the virtuous man on screen. They felt betrayed. "No way, not Michael," comments flooded social media. "Why speak out now when he's not here to defend himself?" For them, tarnishing the image of a deceased icon was unacceptable, an act of disrespect towards a legacy they cherished. But on the other side, a strong wave of support emerged, especially from women who had experienced their own silent marriages. They saw Cindy's story not as an accusation, but as a courageous confession. They believed her. "Someone can't carry that pain for 30 years just to seek attention," one person wrote. "That's not attention-seeking, that's survival." For those who believed and empathized, Cindy's story didn't destroy Michael Landon's legacy. It simply added a more complex, human dimension. It acknowledged that a man could be both a screen genius and a good father in his own way, while also being a husband who failed to bring happiness and recognition to his wife. This divide highlights a larger truth. Accepting the coexistence of two truths is incredibly difficult. Fans had to confront the uncomfortable reality that their childhood hero was also just a human being, with flaws and shortcomings like anyone else. Cindy's story isn't just about her marriage. It has become a test of the public's ability to face the complexity of human nature, rather than clinging to perfect but unrealistic figures. Resurrecting from silence. Cindy Landon's purpose was never revenge. She wasn't seeking to destroy Michael's legacy, she was seeking to complete it. Because an authentic legacy must encompass both light and shadow. Her speaking out wasn't an act of destruction, but an act of restoration, restoring her own story, a story that had been erased for too long. Now she lives a quieter life, but it's a life on her own terms. She is no longer bound by the role of the perfect widow or the fear of public opinion. She has reclaimed her lost voice and identity. That voice doesn't ring out to accuse, but to tell a complex truth with the calm of someone who has found peace. Her journey conveys a profound and powerful message. It shows us that love and pain can absolutely coexist. A man can be a hero on screen, yet a stranger at home. And most importantly, speaking the truth after years of silence is not a betrayal, but a journey of self-liberation. By telling her story, Cindy Landon didn't just free the secret that had held her captive for 3 decades. She freed herself. Cindy Landon's story leaves a powerful resonance, challenging us to re-examine what we believe about our idols and the truth behind the glamour. So, what do you think? Can we both admire Michael Landon's legacy and empathize with Cindy's pain? Is her speaking out after 30 years a courageous act to claim justice for herself, or an unnecessary disturbance of the past? Share your perspective in the comments below. Every viewpoint helps create a more complete picture. And if you enjoy profound stories that unveil complex truths behind events, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content from us. Thank you for watching.